if you choose research as your career, one of the things that you have to conduct is sponsored research. This is because any research that we conduct that requires equipment, manpower, consumables and other things, and the way the scientific establishment in India and most other countries work is that if you are a member of faculty in a institution, the institution is supposed to provide you your salary, your office, maybe a space for setting up the lab, but the rest you have to bring by writing project proposals, grant proposals and bringing in money from external agencies. And so, writing project proposals, getting the money, properly utilizing the money for conducting your own research, finally delivering the deliverables, these are very important components of one's research career. And today, we will learn how to actually go about doing that. You might argue that many of you might say that my area of work is theoretical research, so why do I need any financial support like that? Now, a theorist also needs computational power, a theorist also needs manpower and also funding. You need a bit of freedom in the funding. You might need to visit a collaborator. You might need to go to conferences within India. Conferences abroad are not supported normally by funding agencies, but within India you might need to go to conferences. So, in order to do those networking, and you might need to employ manpower in order to do certain things, and those things are not normally supported by the institute and you have to get money for that. Importantly, having a project, having the fund from the project gives a faculty member a lot of freedom in doing things, and so it is always advisable to have projects in hand. So, there are in India various funding agencies that fund this kind of projects. There are some funding agencies that are sort of general in nature. They fund projects in various diverse areas, not area specific, and there are also funding agencies that fund area specific research. General funding agencies, for example, the Department of Science and Technology, the DST, its branch, but more or less works independently, the ACRB, the Science and Engineering Research Board. There is the CSIR, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. There is also the Department of Atomic Energy, whose funding body is BRNS. So, these bodies normally fund research in diverse areas, while there are area specific funding agencies also. For computer science related projects, there is the Department of Information Technology. For biology related projects, there is the Department of Biotechnology. For art science related projects, there is the Ministry of Art and Environmental Sciences. So, these are the agencies that either support general research or they support specific area specific research. Now, always you have to have a very clear idea, I will do research and therefore give money, that does not work. You have to have a very focused clear idea as to what you want to do, and that idea you have to convince a body that this idea is worth pursuing and you are able to pursue that. And that is the whole purpose of writing a proposal and defending a proposal. So, you have an idea, that idea has to be propagated, that idea has to be, you have to convince a body about that idea. And that is the challenge every researcher has to face. Apart from these funding agencies, now under the National Education Policy 2020, it has been proposed to form another nationwide science funding agency, research funding agency called National Research Fund. It is not yet clear what will be the status of the other existing funding agencies when the NRF start functioning in full form, but as yet the proposal is that it will be an additional funding agency. So, whatever I have mentioned as existing so far, you have to add this NRF. Now, every funding agency sometimes identifies some thrust areas and they advertise for projects on that. That means they identify thrust areas and they invite projects in that thrust area. Sometimes development of a specific material can be a thrust area, sometimes energy, alternative energy resources can be a thrust area, sometimes solving the water problem can be a thrust area, and all that. These are identified as thrust areas. And if you submit a proposal in a thrust area, then a money is allocated for the thrust area, it becomes relatively easier to get the funding. But otherwise also, any idea that you have, if you are able to convince a body that the idea is workable and you are able to do that, then this is normally funded. So, first thing is to identify the funding agency to which you want to submit it, and then you have to write up the project proposal. Every funding agency has a format in which you have to write and submit the project proposal. These formats might be different, but in general they ask for the same set of informations, maybe arranged in a different order, but ultimately they need the same set of information in order to judge whether the project is fundable or not. So, what I will do is to take one such example and go by that, and for any other funding agencies, all you need to do is to download their format and write accordingly, but the same set of information will have to be provided. Before you start writing, you have to figure out which agency you will submit it to. If it is a general purpose agency, you might anticipate that the reviewers might not be very area specific. So, you have to be a bit explicit in writing the proposal, and if it is very area specific, then you might get area specific reviewers. The way the whole process is conducted is that after you submit it, mostly these days submission is online. After you submit it, the agency sends it to a few peers in that area within India. That means scientists within India who are working in that area or related areas are asked to comment on the suitability of this proposal and whether or not the agency should fund it. Any badly conceived and badly written proposal is sieved out immediately. These do not stand any chance. It has to be well conceived and well written proposal. After the first set of review is done, a few of the proposals are shortlisted, and these the proposers of these proposals are asked to defend their proposals before a committee. And then physically either you have to go there or it is online, but it has to be a defense. You have to give a short talk on your idea and you have to defend, not only defend the idea but also defend the budget. And finally, if the body is convinced, they approve it, then you get a letter from that agency saying that your project is approved, then the money comes and your institution then has to open. Normally there is a section in every institution that handles the clerical part of this project handling. They open a file, give a number, and from then onwards every expenditure incurred by that project is entered in that file, and ultimately, so that every year you can send the financial and other reports. So, you have to remember that the project proposal that you submit is in some sense similar to submission of a paper, in the sense that it will also be subjected to peer review, and it has to be written that way. Your objective is to convince the reviewers that you are able to do this, and it is what is your idea worth pursuing. In case of a paper, it is a work that you have done. In case of a proposal, it is a work you have not done, it is only in the form of an idea, and therefore, the whole idea is to sell the idea. Whole idea is to convince that the idea is workable. It is a little more difficult, but doable. So, what I will do is, I will take one such funding agency's format and whatever they demand. So, we are now talking about sponsored research, let us go by that. As I said, today we are handling sponsored research. And for that you have to write a project proposal. Now, as I said, there are different funding agencies and each have their own proposal format, but since the same set of information needs to be presented, I will take the proposal format from the ACRB, Science and Engineering Research Board, one of the prime funding agency in science, and their format demands that certain sets of information have to be uploaded in the online form itself in the text boxes, and in addition there is a detailing of the proposal to be submitted as other technical details and as a separate PDF file. What I will do is, I will first refer to that file, the other technical details file, whatever it contains, and then I will go to the things that we have to upload as the text boxes. The first is the origin of the proposal. Why do we want to do this? Why is it interesting? Why is it worth doing? What is the background on the basis of that you are doing this? So, origin of the proposal is a brief statement of that, from which anybody will get an idea what it is all about. So, it is normally about one page. I mean, when I write these are flexible, but in case of the text boxes, they normally define the maximum limit word length, but in case of the material that you have to provide as the PDF file, there is no such limit, but it is always better to be explicit but brief. Writing pages after pages, nobody will read. You have to write only what is really relevant and interesting for the reviewer. You want the reviewer to read. So, that is the origin of the proposal. Then, as in preparing a research paper, you have to state what is already known in that area. Then you have to, here also you have to state the review of the status of R&D, research and development, in that subject. Now, here you have to state what is already known, but the difference between the literature review part in a paper and in a project proposal is that here the reviewers will like to know who is working on what. A particular, suppose it is related to your development of a specific material, then which group is doing what? Every group around the globe is trying in a particular way to develop similar materials. So, the method might be one group might adopt one method, another group might adopt different materials or components, and so on and so forth. So, you need to know those and you have to present those. That means, the reviewer then is clear that this group is trying this way, that group is trying that way, or if it is so that no group is trying what the proposer wants to do, then what is already known in that area, on the basis of which the proposer has to defend that the proposal is meaningful. So, this has to be more or less person specific. We write person specific in the literature review of papers also, but here it is to be more person specific, and moreover you have to write both the international and national. That means, the reviewer definitely would like to know who within India are working on similar areas, what are their expertise, how are they trying it, and how much progress have they made in that particular direction. This will justify your own attempt. If somebody is doing that, you want to do exactly the same thing, there is no point doing that, because another person is doing that. So, you have to justify in what way your proposal differs from what is being done elsewhere in the internationally as well as in the nation. And sometimes, if it is a very high end project, a lot of expenditure is needed, lot of high end equipment are needed, and if there is another group working nearby, then you might be asked to share the equipment. So, the reviewers want to know exactly who in this area is working within India and also internationally, and how much progress have they made, that is important. And then on that basis, you have to state the importance of the proposed work. The importance of the proposed project, there you have to contextualize. That means, in the context of the work that has already been done or are being done, in that context what is the importance of your work? What actually are you trying to do which is different from what the others are doing? And in this part you have to very clearly state the motivation of this work. Why is it important? Why is it interesting? So, that has to be brought out very clearly in this part. What will be achieved if this project is successful? What is the difference between the project having been done and the project not having been done? So, there must be a difference, right? That means, you have to also specify the deliverables. So, after having stated the importance of the proposed work, the motivation, the novelty of the proposed work, then comes how will you do it, the work plan. Now, the work plan, you have to specify what will you do. Will you perform an experiment? Will you do some simulation? Will you develop some theoretical models? Will you go to the field and do some field work? Will you rent some observation time in a telescope? What exactly will you do? And that has to be clearly specified in this part. And this work plan is actually divided into a few components. Firstly, you have to state the methodology. What will you do? Every research, as I earlier said, has a question, is trying to answer a question, and that question has to be very clearly stated, and then you have to state how will you try to obtain the answer to that question, and that comes under the methodology. Okay. So, the methodology will include whatever you plan to do, what exactly you will do, and the succession in which various steps will be taken. So, these, and you can say these will be around 4 to 5 pages. This is a major part, and you have to convince the reviewer that this is how I will actually achieve what I intend to achieve. Then you have to state the, I have not stated the review of the status. This will be around say 2 to 3 pages, and the importance of the proposed work, normally it is about a page, but 1 to 2 pages you can say. Then methodology, and if you state the methodology, the things that we will do, you have to also state the time schedule, the time schedule means the whole period, normally it is about 3 years, 3-year period will be divided into the quarters, 3 years, and each year is divided into 4 quarters, and in each quarter what will you do? For example, the first quarter normally goes in setting up the or buying the equipment, buying the consumables, recruiting the manpower. So, these are the things that normally takes up the first quarter, and then you start setting up the experimental setup, and then it goes. So, in each quarter what you do, what you plan to do, that has to be stated. So, the normal style of writing that is in the form of a chart. So, you will have to produce a chart something like this. Then there would be the activity. Here you will have to write the activity, and here there would be 3 years, sorry, there would be 3 years divided into quarters. So, there has to be 12 such quarters, right. Now, suppose here you write recruitment, then you write say purchase of equipment. Now, this recruitment will be a something that might take up 2 quarters. So, it is like this. The purchase might take up 3 quarters, something like this. Then the different components of the actual work, if you are going to the field work, say the field work, then you might say that I will go to the field work in this period. Then I will do analysis of the result in another quarter. Finally, the last quarter has to be rounding up the results, writing the papers, writing the final project report and so on and so forth. So, it has to be in this form the way I have just showed. That means, these are in the form of the bars that take up certain quarters. And here the different activities that you have specified in the methodology section. Okay. So, that is how the time schedule is written.